Welcome everyone to the Forgiveness of Student Loan virtual seminar. My name is Maya Sullivan, and I'm the president of the Student National Association of Black Veterinarians Club, also known as SNABV. So before I introduce our guest, I would like to briefly introduce our executive board members of SNABV Club. Please say hello when I call your name. So our vice presidents are Zaire Landon and Nisia Shakur.
Hello. Hello. How you doing?
Our secretary is Alexandria Brown.
Hi.
Our treasurer is Charity Newball, and our advisors are Athema Etzioni and Dr. Rosalyn Casimir. Our speaker for today is Dr. Patti Rose. Dr. Rose acquired her master's degree MPH from Yale University, followed by her doctorate EDD from Teachers College, Columbia University. She has served as a faculty member at various universities in the Florida and Massachusetts areas. She is currently the president and founder of Rose Consulting. Dr. Rose has also served as president and CEO of Plainfield Health Center in Plainfield, New Jersey, and as vice president of behavioral health services at the Jesse Trice Center for Community Health, one of the largest community health centers in the nation in Miami, Florida. She is the author of several books, including Cultural Competency for Health Administration and Public Health, and Cultural Competency for the Health Professions, as well as the first edition of the Health Disparities and Diversity Context, Controversies, and Solutions, and the second edition of the Health Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion, Context, Controversies, and Solutions. She also has several other books on various topics, including children's books series and 2 booklets focusing on student loans. During the several summers of 2013 to 2017, Dr. Rose served in various capacities, including visiting professors and faculty members at several universities in China. She has studied and has language skills in Spanish and Mandarin based on her travels and intense study. So, our speaker for today is Dr. Patti Rose. Dr. Rose acquired her master's degree MPH from Yale University, followed by her doctorate EDD from Teachers College, Columbia University. She has served as a faculty member at various universities in the Florida and Massachusetts areas. She is currently the president and founder of Rose Consulting. Dr. Rose has also served as president and CEO of Plainfield Health Center in Plainfield, New Jersey, and as vice president of behavioral health services at the Jesse Trice Center for Community Health, one of the largest community health centers in the nation in Miami, Florida. She is the author of several books, including Cultural Competency for Health Administration and Public Health, and Cultural Competency for the Health Professions, as well as the first edition of the Health Disparities and Diversity Context, Controversies, and Solutions, and the second edition of the Health Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion, Context, Controversies, and Solutions. She also has several other books on various topics, including children's books series and 2 booklets focusing on student loans. During the several summers of 2013 to 2017, Dr. Rose served in various capacities, including visiting professors and faculty members at several universities in China. She has studied and has language skills in Spanish and Mandarin based on her travels and intense study and speaking practice in both languages. Let's welcome Dr. Patti Rose.
Thank you all so much.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And Maya, you did a very good job with
Thank you.
she had a very long bio sketch, and I told her just take whatever you want out of it and share. And she did a great job. So thank you so much. I
Thank
appreciate
you.
that. So I am very delighted to be here with all of you. So hello, everyone. And I'm glad to have the opportunity to talk to you about something that is very pressing. And I'm just going to give you an overview and try to cover as many things as I possibly can quickly. And then I'm going to take questions. So as you're listening to me, if you think of any questions, jot them down. And I might not be able to answer all of them, but I'll answer what I can. I do have 2 booklets, and I had really asked if everyone could try to grab them and read them. They're Kindle books. They're not physical books. They have a very low price point at $3.99 each. I won't charge more for them because these were booklets that I put together for my students. So with that being said, I'm going to be talking mainly from those booklets. And some of you hear this title, Forgiveness for Your Student Loans. And immediately what we think of is, how can I get out of this? How can I not pay my student loans? And I think that's what that terminology brings to mind. But I'm really talking about something else, first and foremost, when I say forgiveness for your student loans. The first thing that we must do is, particularly if we're undergrads or if we're dependents and if our parents were involved in the process of getting loans, the first area of forgiveness is forgiving your parents, who in their loving complicity allowed you to do what you had to do, which was take out loans so that you could pursue your higher education. So sometimes when undergrads go to school and they take out loans and they fill out the FAFSA and all of that, at the end of the 4 years, they're hysterical because they realize, oh my goodness, I have so many student loans. How could this happen? How could this be? How did my parents let this happen to me? And so everyone's situation is different, but if there were parents involved, forgive them, because it is almost impossible to attend higher education institutions these days without taking out loans, unless you're independently wealthy. And some people are in that predicament where they can just pay. The second is forgiving yourself for taking out loans that have the potential to keep you in debt for the rest of your life. So that's a very serious statement. So we have to forgive ourselves because education is so important, and particularly higher education in this nation, where in order to function and to get an optimal work experience or to pursue what you love, and in this case, to become a veterinarian, you need loans because it's so expensive. So how do you forgive yourself when you're looking and facing those loans right in front of you and you're not sure how you're going to handle it? So we're going to talk about that because you are not alone. How many people, just for those of you who are visible and I can see you, how many of you feel that student loans are a true burden in your life? Okay, so some of us don't want to share, and that's another thing I want to say is, please do not have shame if you have student loans, because there's a lot of shame that goes along with it. And there's no reason to be ashamed. Listen, the only way to pay, as I said previously, is to take out loans. So there's no need for shame. This is a space where we can talk about it. So we're going to focus on 2 words that I want you to think about and remember. And those 2 words are due diligence in handling your student loans. So if you have a federal student loan now, you may not have to make payments at all. So I'm going to say that very clearly. We're talking about due diligence. So I'm going to go over what due diligence means, but let's start with where we are right now today. If you have federal student loans right now, you may not have to pay until January 1st of 2021 if your loans are owned by the Department of Education. So some people are just going ahead and paying their student loans, and they're not realizing that on August 8th, 2020, the current president of the United States extended the 0% loan interest rate for federal loans and suspension of payments on federal student loans owned by the Department of Education. So there is literally a reprieve right now where you don't have to pay and no interest is accruing. Now, is that going to continue? No one knows. We'll know after the election. The current president has indicated that he's going to be extending that indefinitely if he wins. We shall see. The other candidate is saying that he's not going to extend that, but he's going to reduce student loans or forgive $10,000 for individuals. That's not enough. So we want to really pay attention. If you're not paying attention to the election for any other reason and you have student loans, this is a reason to really pay attention so you can figure out how your input can be shared in regard to this, no matter the candidate. So what are the types of student loans? There's two types. One is a private student loan, and that is with banks and a credit check is required. The other is the federal student loan, and that's the government loan. That's what most people have. And there's the federal government loan, including the Perkins loan. So let's go over these kinds of loans so that you understand. If you have a student loan, before 2010, there was something called the FFEL. And that was through the banks, and the banks guaranteed those loans. Those exist no more. So now what we have after 2010 are loans that are issued directly by the Department of Education. There's no banks involved, okay? So you are literally taking out loans from the federal government of the US. So we're only going to discuss direct loans. And the reason why we're only going to discuss direct loans is because that's all there is in terms of federal loans right now. There is a form of forgiveness outside of the forgiveness that I already talked about. There's the public service loan forgiveness. I'm going to implore you all to research this because we can't cover it all today. It's written in your master promissory note. It's actually a term. So what is a master promissory note? When you take out a student loan today, you fill out a form, and that becomes a promissory note. And that promissory note means literally promise to pay. When I was growing up and I was in college, there was no master promissory note. This is new. There were individual promissory notes for individual loans. So that means you have one document that carries all of your loans. And that is filed and it's kept on record. And so it is always there. Every time you take out a loan, it becomes part of the master promissory note. That's the federal loan. So public service loan forgiveness is an actual term. So most people who apply for this kind of forgiveness are rejected. So do not look at this as a panacea that's going to resolve it for you, because most people are rejected. What are the rules? 120 on-time full payments, 120. Working for a qualified organization. So you have to be working for a particular type of organization in order to qualify for that. And that is something you will have to research. And that's for federal direct loans only, not for FFEL, if you have that, or not for the Perkins loan. The Perkins loan is a loan that's provided to you via your university. So it's federal money, but it comes to the university. So after you graduate, your university will collect it from you. And so it is not part of the public service loan forgiveness. Now let's be clear, student loans equal debt. a student loan is a debt. So when you have a debt or credit, there's two things that matter. One is interest rates and the other is the repayment terms. How long do I have to pay it and what's the interest? Those are two things that you must know. If you don't know the interest on your loans right now, you are missing critical information. And it could be very high. It could be from 5% to 7.9%, for some private loans, 12%. It's really shocking. And that's what really hits hard, the interest on the loans. So what is our student loan debt in the United States right now? Collectively, it's over $1 trillion. And this is why I say you're not alone. $1 trillion. It's such a substantial amount of money that it's hard to reconcile in our minds, but that's what it is. It's borrowed from taxpayer money. And what is it for? It's to pay for your college expenses as well as your college attendance. So it's taxpayer money and it is handled with interest, which means money is made off of that money. So let's talk about the grace period. When you graduate, there's something called the grace period. And in my booklet, I say, there's no grace in the grace period. And why is there no grace? Because you have 6 months when you graduate for which you don't have to pay. Basically chill, that's the way it feels, right? But during that time, this is what happens. Interest statements will start to arrive. Interest is accruing. So the interest doesn't stop, it's accruing. And your servicer may introduce themselves to you. Now, what's a servicer? Let's talk about that quickly. So the government provides you with the loans, and then they need somebody to collect the money back. And so they hire companies. The government hires companies. And you might have heard of them. They're called Navient, Nelnet, and there's some others. Their job is to collect the money back from you. That's what they do. And so they're called services. They're not services for you, they're services for the government to collect the money. So they will send out privacy notices. They will send out notices that say, your grace period is going to end soon. And they're very friendly notices and so forth. But they're letting you know, get ready, because it's going to be time for you to pay. So my question is, where is the grace during the grace period? Grace, if we all know that term, is supposed to mean mercy, love. But in actuality, when it comes to student loans, it's not that kind of grace. It's just a little bit of respite. And so I give advice in my booklets about how to get yourself ready during the grace period. And I recommend applying yourself to this acronym that I came up with, and it's FORCE. Number one is focus. Be very, very focused. If you've taken out thousands upon thousands upon thousands of dollars to go to school, then you need to focus. And finally, now that you've finished all your classes and whatever it is that you have to do, you need to focus on, what do I need to do in order to understand these student loans? Because sometimes during the time when we're in school, we never even look at them or think about them. But you have to do that. The next thing is to get organized. As these papers are coming in and emails and so forth, do not throw them in the garbage or delete them. Don't do that, because that's not helping, because they're going to keep coming, okay? Get ready. And how do you get ready? You get ready by understanding the process and making decisions about whether you're going to be able to pay or not pay and all of that. And I'm going to talk about that in a moment. The next thing is to stay in control. Do not be nervous or concerned about the services or anything to that effect. Just stay in control of this situation, because it's definitely handleable. You can handle it. And lastly, be empowered about it. So don't be afraid when it comes to the student loans, and don't get into an avoidance mode of throwing everything in the garbage or ignoring it or whatever. Just face it, because it's going to be something that you're going to be able to deal with. The most important thing that I can say to you today is do not allow yourself to go into default. Avoid default. So default is simply not paying your loans and then having to deal with the ramifications of not paying the loans, or at least not figuring out how you can not pay them and it's okay. Because there are ways for you to not pay and it's okay, but you have to understand the process. So let's go over this again. Do not delete or throw out your student loan mailings and ignore them, because that won't make them go away. What that will do is lead you to default. Okay? So let's go over the word due diligence again. Due diligence means communication with the services, reading the materials, understanding them, knowing how many loans that you have. All of this is part of the due diligence process. How much do I owe? Face that number. Look at all of it and face the number. The ramifications of default. If you go into default, this is what happens. Wage garnishment. So if you have a job, they can't take your whole paycheck, but they can take a portion of it up to a point. Ruined credit. So after a point, if you don't pay your student loans, it can impact your credit rating. Taking of your tax refund by the IRS. So you worked and you're about to get your refund and you're all excited about that. It's not going to come if you go into default, because they're going to take it. Other methods at their disposal will be utilized. Now, the good news is that there's no debtor's prison. So you don't have to worry about that, because some people get worried. They say, well, I'm going to get locked up if I can't pay my student loans and so forth. There is no debtor's prison. So those other items that I talked to you about are the issues. And some people say, hey, well, garnish my wages, or, I don't care about credit. It doesn't matter, and blah, blah, blah. And they just go into default. But it does matter at some point. If you want to buy a home, if you want to buy a car, all those kind of things, those things matter. So you want, to the best of your ability, because things happen, to try to keep that together. And so as we are speaking about student loans, if you go forward with due diligence, you can avoid these actions against you. So due diligence is also about letting your servicer know your current situation and exploring all options available to you. And there's a lot of options. And this is what I think a lot of people don't understand. So let's go over some of those options. The first one is deferment. There's so many different kinds of deferments. And deferment simply means that you defer. You don't pay the loan right now. You communicate with the servicer and you say, I can't pay right now because of A, B, C, whatever it is. They'll give you a form to fill out. You fill out the form. If you're approved for deferment, you don't have to pay. And that can go on for a certain number of years, and that will be discussed with your servicer. The second is forbearance. So forbearance is not preferred over deferment. So if you take a look at the booklet, I break these down very specifically so that you understand the difference between deferment and forbearance. Then there's forgiveness. We already talked about that. Then there's reduction in payments. So if your income is low because you're not working or whatever the reason is, there are different types of programs that you can be a part of that could actually have your payment at zero and it's still considered a payment. So that's important to know. Or you might have to pay $5 or $10 or $15 or $50, whatever it is that you are eligible for. And those will still be considered part of your payments. And then there's varying types of payments. In part 2, I thoroughly go over all the types of federal loans and repayment options. So let me list them for you. There's standard repayment, there's extended repayment, graduated payment, income contingent payment. That's the one that I'm talking about where you might end up paying very little money depending on your income. Income-based payment is another form of payment in which you may end up paying very little, and then pay-as-you-earn repayment, which is another category. All of your federal loan information for your loans that you took out can be found at directed.gov. Because some of you might be thinking, where am I even going to find all of my loan information? I don't even know what I took out. I started taking out loans when I was a freshman, and now I'm in vet school, or whatever your story is. And you might not have an idea of when you took out loans and how much and so forth. You've just been signing that master promissory note and taking out loans. It's cataloged under your name and your social security number, and you have account numbers that are assigned to those loans. And when you go there to the website and take a look, you will see every loan that you ever took out. It's a daunting thing to look at, but you got to look at it at some point. Now, the kind of loans that you will see on that page are direct subsidized. Now, direct subsidized loans are loans that you may have taken out when you were undergrad because they're for undergrads only. And while you're in school, there's no interest. So you will see direct subsidized loans. The other is direct unsubsidized. There are no direct subsidized loans for grad students. All loans for grad students are accruing interest while you're in school. Now, this happened under the prior administration. And so that's unfortunate, but it's a reality. The direct unsubsidized loan is not based on financial need, so anybody can take those out. The direct subsidized are based on financial need. So you need to understand the distinction between those two loans, because while you're in undergrad or were in undergrad, there were no interest rates accruing on your loans. Then there is the direct plus loan. This is for undergrads and grad students. If you're an undergrad, your parents have to take those out. And they have to have a clean credit history. And so does the student. For grad students, you can also take out a plus loan, and those are accruing interest as well. And those can be taken out by the grad student alone. You don't need a parent to do that. But all of those loans are definitely, in terms of the parent and non-parent, just the plus loan, those are accruing interest as soon as you take them out. I want us to talk about this in an upbeat and positive way, because the fact of the matter is that, as I said, if you have student loans, you are not alone. Over $1 trillion in debt, this nation, in student loans. That means when you look to your right, you look to your left, no matter who you're looking at, they most likely have a student loan if they're at school, unless they're independently wealthy or they have figured out some other way to pay, which with prices today, that's probably not the case. There's no shame in it. Nothing at all. It's just a matter of the same way that you're tackling school, you got to tackle these student loans. You have to understand it, know what's going on, and be savvy and smart about it, and figure out everything that is available to you that you can take advantage of that's in your best interest. So I know you all can do that. So let's go with questions. Does anyone have any questions for me?
And thank you, Dr. Rose, for that information about student loans.
Oh, you are welcome. I hope there's questions. Take advantage of this opportunity, because unfortunately, when we are students, unless things have changed, but nobody talks to us about student loans. There's no class, there's no lectures, there's nothing. and you walk out at the end and you have no idea the information that you need. So this is a wonderful opportunity.
Yes, it was really awesome. I really appreciate that.
Oh, good. I'm glad.
I have a question.
Sure.
My name is Terrence Mitchell. I'm a first year vet student at Tuskegee University, College of Veterinary Medicine. I just have a question about the transition of debt from undergrad to grad school, because I know there's some different steps in the process, but just how to deal with the accumulation of your undergrad debt on top of your grad school debt. So then by the time you get out of school for real, you kind of have 2 levels of debt, if that makes any sense.
Yes, it does. And you don't, let's say you don't necessarily have 2 levels of debt, you have 2 types of debt. So when you're an undergrad, and if you met the need requirements, you would have the subsidized direct loans. And you probably would maybe have the Perkins loan and maybe the plus loan that your parent has taken out. These are the categories. But when you get to grad school, everything at that point is unsubsidized. And so when it's time for you to take a look at your loans, you would go to the Department of Ed website that I told you about, and you will see each of those loans. They will each be assigned an account number, and it will indicate whether it's subsidized or unsubsidized. And they really just go into one big pot. And your servicer will then have all of those student loans, and your servicer will aggregate those loans, and you will have a monthly payment based on your loans. And when you look at it, it looks very, very complicated because there's so many different loans, but that's how it works. And who do you talk to about all of this so that you understand it? You speak to your servicer. And you really, really interrogate them about it. You want to know everything about your loans. When did I take this out? You know, what is the interest rate on it? What can I do in terms of my payment options, meaning my repayment options? You want to stay on top of it like crazy. You know, you don't want to leave it up to them. You want to stay on top of it. You have to look at this like, this is my money. This is money that I have to pay back. And there is no question that I can't ask you. I want to know everything. And that's how you handle it, very assertively. So yes, all of it is going to be there for you to see. It's just based on what type of loan you took out at what time in terms of graduate school versus undergraduate school. Does that make sense, Terrence?
Yes, thank you so much.
Okay, great.
I do have a question. I really want to save the time for the students, and I do see a couple of our alumni, so I'm happy to see them. But
Good.
as far as the type of loans that you take out, I had loans in undergrad and loans in vet school. And, you know, I was called and asked about putting them together. I forgot the name of it just now. So the question is, when would you do so and when would you not? I had one loan that I saw was a smaller interest rate than what they were wanting to give me, which they wanted to give me one that was between a couple of the loans that I had. Consolidation, that's what I'm talking about. So consolidation, they were asking me about consolidating. So I wound up paying one of them off because it had a lower rate. But what are the good and bad about making a decision to consolidate? And I also didn't know that the interest stayed the same. Didn't matter how much you paid down the loan, the interest per month stayed.
Yes, the interest stays the same as to when you took it out. Okay, this is a very, very good question. So what you are asking about is loan consolidation, and everyone really listen up because this is really important. So when you graduate and you have all of those loans from undergrad and grad school at varying interest rates, depending on the type of loan and so forth, you can consolidate all of your loans. You can consolidate the federal Perkins loan, and you can consolidate all of the direct loans. And what is the benefit to doing that? I'm not going to argue for or against it because it's a personal decision. But what you're trying to achieve is to get to a lower interest rate, because they will use a formula when taking all of those loans together, and they will come up with an interest rate that might be lower than your highest interest rate, but higher than your lower interest rate, if you know what I mean. So I don't want to say it falls exactly in the middle, because there's a formula that they use. And you can ask them, grill them, what is that formula before I consolidate? There's no question that you should leave unturned. So you want to know how are you calculating this? Okay, you came up with an interest rate of 7%. I'm just throwing a number in. How did you arrive at that before I actually go ahead with the consolidation? Once you're satisfied with the interest rate and you see that you now have a better interest rate, because that's going to give you a brand new loan. That's going to take all of your other loans and put them all together, and then it's going to give you a brand new one consolidated loan instead of having a whole bunch of them. Now, be very, very careful. There are a lot of private companies out there, private banks, that are trying to get people to, hey, bring your loans out of the federal system and consolidate it with us, and we're going to give you a lower interest rate. Sounds great, right? The problem with that is that once you go into the private system, you no longer receive any of the options that I just went over with you, those repayment options. Those are federal repayment options. So now you are beholden to a bank, and that's a whole different story. So now you can't get the income contingent, you can't get the income base, you can't get the repayee. They might not have deferment in the same way, they might not have forbearance. They're going to have their own rules because they're private. And if loans get, for example, look at right now, where we do not, in this society, if you have federal student loans, you don't have to pay until the beginning of January 2021. If you had consolidated with a private bank, you're not in that. You are still paying. If the government decides that it's going to forgive student loans, if it decides, this is a very bad debt, over $1 trillion, it's uncollectible, it's really hurting our young people, they can't buy houses, they can't buy cars, we're going to get rid of them. Because remember, there were some candidates, if you were watching the whole process, who were suggesting, let's just get rid of the student loans. Let's just forgive them for everybody. If you had consolidated with a private bank and they decide to do that, you're out. So it's a big risk to consolidate outside of the system in which you took out the loans. So I can't tell anyone what to do in regard to that. I'm just giving you my opinion about it. But there are a lot of options if you remain consolidated within the government from which you took out the loans.
Thank you.
So keep that in mind.
Thank you. That helps.
Yeah, because they're marketing hard. They're marketing really hard. Yes, I hear someone else speaking.
I was saying thank you very much. That really helped. I said I wish I knew that 20 years ago. Erica Bell has a question. You want to ask your question out loud, Erica?
Yes, I did. I was just wondering, and I was kind of like, not really like morbid, but if I don't pay off all of the debt, because I am a first year in vet school and I do have debt from underloan, before I pass, does that debt get passed on to my children? That's the only thing I'm concerned about, really.
That's so thoughtful of you. In actuality, your debt ends, and this is so morbid, I hate to say it, but your student loans, one of the ways that you get out of your federal student loans is death.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
So how that proceeds is complicated. So I wouldn't speak on it further than that. The other is that if you are an older person in this society and you begin to collect Social Security and you haven't paid your student loans, they will take some of your Social Security, okay?
Okay.
And it's starting to get a little bit more lenient, but you can't even get out of these loans with bankruptcy. So I've been reading some articles of late where, because I stay on top of this completely, and they're starting to move toward bankruptcy options, but not really. So don't look at bankruptcy as a way out.
I would,
Thank
like,
you.
I would like to add something to that. So in terms of other types of debt, can you hear me? So
Yes.
in terms of other types of debt, you have what's called an estate for the person who's deceased.
Yes.
And usually they will employ a executrix or executor to take
Sure.
care of their estate or their affairs. You know, so if they had a house, if they had a car, belongings, those things, that would all be a part of the estate. And so like with credit card debt, they would
Yes.
be paid from the estate.
Sure.
So that, you know, and if there was nothing from the estate, then it would just go uncollected.
Right, but that is not the case with federal student loan debt. So do your research and carefully explore that. But with student loan debt, because remember, this is a federal debt, it's different. It's not a private bank. Credit cards, mortgages, all of those things, those are private banks. But this is a federal debt, so it's slightly different. So it has its own rules. It doesn't fall under the same rules as private debt. Now, if you move your loans out of the federal system, as I talked about earlier, and you consolidate or do whatever with a private bank, then it's a whole different ball game. But there are very specific rules with the federal loans. So it is not handled the same way as credit card debt and et cetera. But they do have a lot more latitude to collect while you are owing the debt, because they can take it from your tax return. So if you're getting a refund, they can take it before it gets sent to you if you are in default and you owe the money. They can, I used to be, as you read in my bio, vice president and president of community health centers. And community health centers largely serve our communities. And I had a very large staff under me as vice president as well as president. And one of the things that I found out that was shocking, I mean, just shocking, was that most of my staff was having their checks garnished by the government for their student loans and in some cases for child support and so forth. But I was really surprised when I found out how many of my staff was actually experiencing wage garnishment for student loans. So they can't take your entire check. They can only take a portion of it up to a point, but they have the latitude to do those kinds of things. So it's a little bit different.
Any other questions?
I know in the chat, Blessed asked if we could have your contact information if they had any future questions to ask you, like your email or something of that nature.
Sure. I think that there's three answers to that question. One is yes. My email address is available. So I can provide that to Maya, and then Maya can communicate with me if anyone would like to get in touch with me. Is that okay, Maya? Is that putting too much on you?
No, that's fine. That's okay.
Okay. Yeah, so I will provide my email address to her, and Dr. Daniel also has my email address. So those are ways to contact me. I'm also on LinkedIn, so you find me there as Dr. Patti Rose. I'm normally on Facebook and Instagram, but I just recently, last week, took a hiatus from those two platforms. So I've stepped off for a little while. I'll come back, but I do that from time to time. I'm also on Twitter, and my Twitter handle is @naturalistcool. So there's a lot of different ways to reach out to me. But I highly recommend, and it's not because I'm promoting these little booklets. I am an author. I have several other books that are out there in the world around health disparities and cultural competency and all of those things. And those books are textbooks and so forth. But these little booklets are booklets that I literally wrote because as a professor, at the end of the year, some of my students would come and see me, and they would literally be in tears because they would recognize that they had all of these student loans and they had had their exit interview either online, and they used to be in person, the exit interviews. I don't know how they're doing them these days, but they are often online these days. And they would come to me, oh my God, Dr. Rose, I have so many student loans. I had no idea. I don't know what to do, but it would be quite emotional. And so I said, I have to do something about this. I have to write something so that when students graduate, they have a resource that they can go to that, number one, first helps them to understand that you have to forgive yourself and not be upset about this and get in the right direction on it. And number two, you need consolidated information, quick, in a little booklet, not like 20 different websites with all different sorts of information and just madness that you cannot figure out. You can if you take the time, but it's not consolidated in a very easy way. And so I had quite a few students that went on to go to medical school. And they would contact me and say, oh my God, I'm not even able to do anything because all of my money is going to my student loan payments. And I said, no, that's not the case. Let's go over what your options are so that you don't have to pay that much money while you're not making a lot of money, because there's a process for this, but you have to understand it. And the concern was always, but I don't have time to look at all of this. It's so complicated and I don't even know what to ask the servicer. I don't even know what to ask them. So I'm just lost. So I put these two little books together, part one and part two, for this reason. That's it. And whenever someone asks me about student loans, which happens, I just send them the links. Those two little booklets have everything that I would go over. And then when you contact me, if you need to have further questions answered, you'll be in a better position to ask the questions. Because I can literally, I have mine on my iPad, because I have the books myself. And I put them on my iPad. And so that when somebody contacts me and they want to talk about student loans, I'll ask them, just pull it up. This is one of them. I don't know if you could see it. Basic covers, nothing fancy. And it has all of the various things that I went over today and more. It really goes into due diligence and so forth and how to proceed. And I even have some affirmations in there because people get a little stressed out about their student loans. And I'd say, listen, just affirm yourself and try to be positive, because we have to approach this from a very positive vantage point. It can be handled. I assure you that it can be handled. And I know students right now who have payments of $0, but it's considered a payment because of their salaries and because they set up accordingly using the payment options that are available to them, or the repayment options. So there's so many ways to handle this, but you got to know how to do it.
I do
have to know how.
I do have another question.
Sure.
So regarding if, I wound up consolidating, and so, private bank, and then it was Sally Mae, and then Sally Mae went to this, went to that, went to that. So with 12 different, I guess, servicers since I started the loan,
yes,
do they change what you signed off on that first bank? Or so, I mean, you don't have an option to not change. They just change and say, hey, I'm a new servicer.
Right.
How do you understand that this is not a fraud? Or
well, as I said, the most important thing is absolute 100% communication with your servicer. So what I would do is I would contact the servicer, and I would have a list of every loan that I have. And you can find that, as I said, by going to the Department of Ed website. and you can see every loan that you have that you ever took out. And you have that information. You don't need to share that with anybody. That's your private information. So you have that on the side, and then I would contact the servicer and say, for every loan that you are having me pay, I would like to see exactly when I took out that loan, where, how much was it, what was the interest rate. I want a full record of every detail. Now, if you consolidate it, they're probably going to have just one document, but that document should show you everything in regard to your loan, because they have to keep records of everything. They can't just write to you and say, okay, so you owe $2,000 a month for your loans. And you have to say, excuse me, okay, that's fine, but I want to know the specific details regarding that $2,000 and how you came about that number. And, I'll wait. You can tell them, I'll be patient while you get that together, but I want to see every single thing related to my loans. Because if it got passed on from one servicer to another, do they have all the records from when that transpired? And if they do have all of the records, or if you have any doubt, as you seem to be possibly expressing, don't have doubt. Say, send me everything. Listen, if you have a mortgage on a house, right? And the mortgager says, you owe X amount. At any point, you can contact them. You should have every document from your mortgage. But you know who else has to have it? Them. Because if your house catches on fire and you lose every single document in relationship to your mortgage, you can't say to the bank, oh, I don't owe you anything because I lost all the paperwork and I don't know anything. What are they going to say? Oh, not to worry, we have it. Right?
Yeah.
So they have it.
Paying it.
Right. They have it. And if they don't have it, that's a problem on their end. So when you graduate and the servicer starts sending you documentation to say that you owe this, that, and that, you can't just accept this. You have to say, okay, that sounds like that might be accurate as to what I took out, but I want you to send me documentation of every single thing. Now, the interesting thing is that because we're online these days, you can go online yourself and you can see everything. So anybody that you have a loan with should have a website. You should be able to log in and you should be able to go through and see every single loan. And then you can match that up with the information that's on the Department of Ed website, because don't think that people don't make mistakes. What if they have one of your loans listed twice? And then you go to the Department of Ed website and you say, hey, wait a minute, you have this loan on here twice, but I only took this out once in, 2014, but you have it here twice. Why is that? You got to put them on the spot and ask them questions. This is money, and this is money that you have to pay. So you have to be on top of this as much as you were on top of your schoolwork and everything else. I'm not paying a bill in my life unless I know what that bill is for, right?
Yes.
Nobody's sending me a bill. When they send me a water bill for my house and it's too high, I'm on the computer, excuse me, but I don't understand how the water bill is this high this month because I was out of town for a month and nobody was using water. How is this happening? You need to do a high bill inspection and let me know how you arrived at this. It's the same thing. Your credit card bill. If you go out shopping and then you get a credit card bill that's way higher than what you paid, or if somebody buys that company and moves it over someplace else, and then they send you a bill and you say, well, I don't know if this is accurate, and who are you? You're going to say to that new credit card company, hey, you bought this bank and you now have my credit. Please send me a record of everything that you feel that I owe before I proceed. Now, most of these places, while you're waiting for them to get their records together and so forth, you have to keep paying. You have to keep paying because you don't want to go into default. But there's time. There's time. So you ask them, how long is it going to take you to get all this paperwork together for me? Because I'll wait. And when they get the pay, and you call them until they send it to you, and then you look at everything and make sure it's accurate. because that's critically important, because sometimes people are paying more than they should be paying just because they're not looking. Does that make sense? Because we're talking about thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars of loans, and we're talking about over $1 trillion, and we're talking about perfect record keeping with these servicers. That's not the case. We have to ask questions.
Thank you.
I hope that helped, Athema.
Yes, it did.
Okay, good. You're going to get on it.
I would like to personally thank Dr. Rose for her time, for, offering her advice and, letting us know about the, the books. We will definitely check out the books and, find out more information. And if we need to contact her, we can contact her on LinkedIn. And I would also like to thank Dr. Daniel. She's been a source of inspiration and guidance in, helping our organization begin to flourish. And I wanted to thank Maya for her leadership, because she's been awesome in spearheading this, program, and for getting our organization approved. And also our exec board, who is also awesome. And, the communication that we have is, priceless. And I look forward to future presentations and meetings and, events that we'll have. And I want to thank all of our visitors that were either undergrad, vet students, or even alumni who took the time to register and to attend. We did have 119 registrants. We want to thank all of the attendees for your time, and thank you everyone for just being here tonight. Maya or anyone on the exec board, do you all have anything else to add? Or Dr. Rose, do you have anything else to add?
No, I just want to thank all of you for being so courageous and willing to have a discussion about this, because a lot of times this is one of those things that people don't really want to talk about too much because we just don't want to face it. But I think it's just fantastic, and that you all are very brave. And I really think that if you just take charge of your student loans, just like you've taken charge of the rest of your life, then you can handle this. And please, please pay attention and raise your voices, because we have to watch, because things are happening with the student loans. And if you are paying right now and you didn't know what I told you today about it not being something that you have to do until January, go and check that out, and you don't have to pay. That's number one. This is only for people who have federal student loans. And then pay attention, because we do have an election coming up, and this is the opportunity to express our voices about what we feel should be happening with these student loans, because there is the possibility. And if you look, as I said, at some of the other candidates that were running, that these loans can be completely forgiven. And if that happened, that would be fantastic. This is the time to raise our voices to say, get rid of these loans, because this is hurting everyone. And it is better for the economy if students are not overburdened when they graduate, when you're no longer students with loans, because the economy needs people to buy houses and to buy cars and to travel and to do all those things that we enjoy doing once we're able to do those things again. And if you're burdened with these student loans, you can't do those things. It's really hurting young people. So raise your voices, and I'm very proud of you. And thank you for having me here today. And I hope if you do have questions, you will follow the channels that we talked about today and reach out to me, and I will try to help you as much as I possibly can.
Thank you so much, Dr. Rose. Thank you so much. Dr. Daniel, do you have anything to add?
Just thank all of you. Thank you, Maya, for your leadership, putting everything together. And thank you. I hate to, Dr. E is all I'm going to say.
Perfect.
Thank you, Dr. E, for
You're welcome.
supporting the students in this endeavor. And I know great things are going to come from the Tuskegee SNABV.
Yes,
And I look forward to collaborating with, you know, your future activities that you're going to have for the organization. Thank you so much, Dr. Rose. I've known Dr. Rose for several years now, and she's really a jewel, and she's a wealth of information. So I encourage you to go to her social media sites to connect with her, pay attention to what she's posting as far as diversity and inclusion and equity is the terms I was looking for. When you start to venture out into veterinary medicine, just you want to be connected with somebody that is awoke and that knows what's going on societally and in society. So she's a good person to connect with as well. So thank you, Dr. Rose.
Well, thank you. And let me just comment, because I just learned in your commentary, Dr. Daniel, that Dr. Etzioni, is that how to say it?
Oh, that was perfect. Yes, ma'am.
Oh, good, Dr. Etzioni. Yes, I did not realize until this moment. You're just so vivacious and looking like one of the students.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, I didn't even realize that someone should have said something to me. You need to be addressed by Dr. Etzioni, and that you are handling things. No, I'm really pleased to know that, because I didn't realize that you were the advisor for the students. So you're actually a faculty member, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am, at the College of Veterinary Medicine. I'm actually an alumnus of the class of 2001.
Oh, that's so fantastic. Well, I'm glad to know that. And so I guess in terms of sharing my information, I will also share it with you, because I just started seeing the communication from you, I think, today. I saw you in Yes, but okay, so that's so wonderful. And Maya, you have been just wonderful. So I know it was challenging. I could see all of the communication and so forth. Usually I'm not that involved. Usually I'm asked to speak and then nobody talks to me again until I sit at the computer or until I'm on stage. But you all were very involved in keeping me in the loop. And I actually appreciated that, because then I had a better understanding of what it took to put all of this together. So wonderful to all of you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I do have a YouTube channel. It has lots and lots of videos, but I'm putting up YouTubes almost weekly. And a lot of my lectures are there, and a lot of my speeches are there, as well as some other fun things. And I have a website called Natural is Cool Enough. It's a blog, which is all about natural hair. And so I have all kinds of stories there and etc. And I usually put, even when it's not about natural hair, because there's a lot of sisters and brothers that come to that website, I put up talks like this too, so that they can get this information.
Great. And Alex just posted the YouTube channel, so that's awesome. So in the time, we will go ahead and end it here. Again, thank you everybody for attending, and we look forward to the next session.
Okay, goodbye. Thanks for having me.
Bye.
Take care, everyone. Bye.
Bye.